Can you remind us, please? Can you introduce the discussion?
You can't remember?
Well, kind of, but we're all at a difference. Well, no, it's best that he reads out the actual, so we all agree.
Remember the gist a bit more.
Well, we got the word elitist, we got the word perception, art,
Masses.
people.
Do you think I've met you before?
You look familiar.
Yeah, so you.
Who are you?
Because I haven't been maybe in Manchester. But I'm sure it's
Okay, question is there. This initial question statement. Something is art, something is art if the audience perceives it as art. However, art is purposely elitist and not really accessible for common people. That's the statement from the last talk, and I got that to put into context with your house. One of the main purposes of the term prize is heightening the public awareness of contemporary art. That's the opinion. So this is a starting point. You can take it wherever you want. And don't, if you run out of ideas about art.
Okay.
Hey, enough. Start then.
Right, thank you.
okay. So,
Right, so the art historian.
I did not, let's choose balls.
Probably the youngest person here. He's 23. Yeah. All right, you start.
Okay, well, I'll go with the aspect of bringing awareness, but I think that, okay, the term prize does bring awareness, but I think it only brings awareness if people come to the exhibit. Just like if you watch the cabin exhibit upstairs, which I think was the best out of all of them, how many people actually saw the past Turner contestants or entries and said, yes, this is art, or no, that's not. And some said, yeah, that's really good, and some said, no. And it's helping to be aware, or helping to make them more aware if they don't even come. You know, all the art museums out there, if no one goes to the art museums, they're just not made aware, so it's a personal choice. Find them.
Sure. I think it does make it more work because it's like the biggest publicised sort of prize in the country. I think I remember the last one, I remember it being about the art prize would get and a cold and look at it all.
Well, my biggest objection to Turner is not that it creates an awareness, but that artists are put in again and again.
Really?
Yeah, well, versus a few times.
It's a reference to it.
No, I agree with you when you say that artists have been submitted a few times. Now, is that the power of people wanting to see this work, or is it the power of the dealers, galleries, curators, art critics who are pushing these people?
yeah.
So
Well, the fact you've been in before shouldn't, I don't believe that shouldn't negate the fact that you can enter it again, but I can understand what you mean in terms of.
Do they submit the same type of art? Or does it change?
No, but I think it's very elitist. I think it's very elitist and what the people are.
Every contest does though.
I think it's very, but I think it's still very elitist and the people are fed. I mean, if I go to the Tate Gallery, Tate Britain, I've got such a variety of art. If I go to Tate Modern, I'm going to be fed a certain type of art. Now, the Turner Award is representing all of art. It's not just representing conception, it's representing all of art. And I think that conceptions that are put in time and time again, I think it is elitism pushing its point.
Well, this is kind of one of the main issues, though, isn't it? Kind of the argument is whether, you know, one of the great things about hopefully one of the great things about the Turner Prize is that people are constantly pushing boundaries and constantly changing people's perception, and obviously, like you said, like the public perception.
Yeah.
Because it is around, isn't it?
But how many people see it advertised? How many go?
I remember the article, it was sort of named a joke of it, it's like the most bit rubbish.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
But that's great though, isn't it? Because even saying that this is all shit is really is a great starting point for discussion.
Well,
You know?
ultimately, when you're saying about the elite, is that conceptualism the elite? Is it like maybe Anderson clothes? And why would the normal person on the street one that wants to look that? You know, what's the beauty in it? You know, Joe Bloggs in the street wants a nice picture, like my mum had Hayley, which absolutely hates it over 5 years for years.
Yeah.
But when you meet sort of average person who would want a conceptual piece of art or want to look at that or have it in their home, and how does that engage anybody? I'm not against it, but that's what you said, it seems to be pushed all the time that this is modern art, but really is that what modern art is?
I think you have to go to this and say, I'm accepting this and proposing this as modern art. But when I go, I might see something and say, I don't think this is, or yeah, it's a work of art, but I don't think it's modern art, or I don't think it is conceptual, or I don't think it's
But ultimately, don't people just want some pleasure or some beauty? And where is that in art, in a lot of art? And was that the original pull to go rather than like contemporary?
I think people find that different. It's not like gallery experiences, like cinema and things like that. It's all art at the end of the day. It's just different formats.
Well, I suppose like visual art or paintings or something, can't they just be aesthetically pleasing and somebody who's done that for that sake rather than having a big rationale behind it?
That's like every artist work. I mean, I'm always buying to these meetings of contemporary art where it's, you look at it and then you have to read it and you say, oh yeah, that was right. It's not. If I like it for aesthetically pleasing, then I like it. Now I want to read into it for myself, and I want to read into it what the authors or the artist is saying, then I will. But I'm probably the only one who doesn't really work with arts, maybe that's why. But
I mean, I think the term elitist, like we keep on saying, like what you said in the statement, is art purposefully elitist. How on earth can we judge what elitist is and say for common people? What do you mean by common people? Is it like just average people that don't go into art galleries? Or is that saying that every person that comes into an art gallery or comes to the Turner Prize who's interested in contemporary art is elitist? I just really disagree with those categories. I don't understand how you can categorise certain types of art as being elitist, or when we talk about the Turner Prize, it's contemporary and therefore it's conceptual. I think those categories are just really wrong, and I don't think the stuff in the Turner Prize can be categorised into kind of being conceptual art, or it's just stuff that, how I look at it, I suppose, stuff that's exciting and new and is happening now. So it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of conceptual art and these little categories that say kind of some people can't relate to, or I don't know.
I think that's the danger of what's actually happening, is the fact that time and time again, the Turner Prize is kind of being pigeonholed and it's being pushed aside.
The press use that, and I think it's very kind of, people's perception shouldn't come from what the press kind of, they've got the Turner Prize and they think, they'll take something like, Damien Hirst, pickled cow or whatever, or kind of, Martin Creed, the lights going on and off, and they'll be like, right, that's the Turner Prize, so therefore everything in the Turner Prize has to be conceptual, anyone can do it, it's not real art. But they just take that and they run with it, that's not art. You can, but I don't think, for me, that's not what contemporary art's about. Every art is about, I don't know, I just think it's a lot more exciting, it's a lot more engaging than people
Whenever we take the
like
word
to
art,
think it is.
what do we see as art?
Everything.
So therefore, how do we differentiate, how do we have elitism? Everything is.
there's elitism to everything, though. I mean,
But we kind of take
Yeah, but that's what it's maybe Tracy Evans soiled as passing, and people are conflicting with the only government.
But some people really love it.
No, I'm saying they don't. What I'm saying is the shock of what she did is gone.
that's what I mean. Look at
But is art
television.
is art-
I think it's just aesthetics.
No,
Why do people-
that's the market, that's the dealers, that's.
But that's
I
what
don't
pushes
think-
what's
I don't think that's
now.
part
Yeah, it's a byproduct, isn't it? I don't think like the shock value is what's important. I think that's secondary, isn't it? The shock value is just kind of byproduct of the fact that art is constantly shifting medium, and that's what we that's the really important thing about. Yeah, but I think it's secondary. I think
Well, the Chaplin brothers actually, they are terrorists, they go for the shock.
But there's this quite
There's so much more to their work about shock. It's not about, I mean, it was initially about shock, I think, and I think people kind of, even now, seeing like a model of a little girl with a penis coming out of her mouth, that's like, whoa, that's really shocking. But then there's so much more behind it, but I think it's down to kind of, not necessarily, I don't know who it's down to really, but maybe you have to look beyond that. You can't just say, look at an image like the press would do and go, oh right, that's shocking, that's awful, that's contemporary art. It's like, well actually, if you take the time to look at it a bit more, and find out about the rest of their work, like their mid-career retrospective here, you know, those kind of so-say shocking
But
kind of models were only a
that-
tiny bit of the
Wasn't that
exhibition.
exhibition that had here kind of contradiction, because you had them doing the Goyas, which I think is taking Goya. They had those the models they made of the dinosaurs, which I thought did nothing for me. But then I saw the Chapman family,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm assuming they used skilled craftsmen to make their concepts,
Well,
their images, but they were
they
beautiful.
made them
No, they were
themselves.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't believe they would have.
Why?
I just
Why
don't.
couldn't
No, I think they would have given it out to the studio. The studio would have made it like Hearst
But
does.
they could have made them
I
themselves.
don't imagine so. No, I'm not saying. I just don't believe they did.
What was it?
Why?
I mean,
Just-
that's where conceptual art. A lot of
That's
happens.
the-
No, but I mean,
I think beautiful
Chapman
art.
Brothers make, I think they make the majority of their work, and just because they do this shocking conceptual stuff doesn't mean they aren't skilled crafts, you know,
I think that's
artists that can
the
actually
nicest,
physically
I
make
don't
something
believe.
really
Well, I
amazing.
stand to be corrected. Right? I know that Hearst doesn't make his own work. He's got his
Yeah,
studio.
but that's one artist.
But that's a major thing that a lot of these people do. It's like what you may call what's his name? The one that Hearst was in America. Good. Jeff Goons, he doesn't make his stuff, he just does the design, has an idea, and gives it to the craftsman.
But that's not what everyone
Gives it to
does.
what they call
That's-
fabricators. Yeah, fabricators, right?
But
I'm not knocking them, I'm not knocking them.
What
What I'm
is
saying is,
it?
what I'm saying is that that room, the
That's
Chapman
kind of
family,
said.
I thought it was fantastic. I fell in love with that. I thought that was fantastic. Whether it did some of the...
It's only the same, it's only the same as
I can accept it.
I mean, artists.
Yeah.
I can accept that, you know, I thought it was beautiful, but I thought the other...
But I mean, that's a great art form in itself.
It's like the reverend,
That's what's
like, you know, thinking out, it's just...
yeah.
You know,
Where's the danger in that? You know?
Chapman room, I thought was
But I
beautiful.
think
An artist doesn't have to be a craft person.
if it's kind of like someone does it and says, well, I come up with this, but someone else made it, as long as that's thrown out there, you know, I don't see the harm in that. If that's what they want to do to achieve the same thing, as long as they say, I personally didn't make this myself. What's the harm?
A lot of the old masters didn't do all their paintings. They might just do the face, or they'd have someone else do the lace, they'd have someone else do this, that's okay. That's fabricating.
So where is the distraction in that work then, if the artist isn't the craftsperson themselves?
Because the artist decides it off as a quality statement of what their concept is.
But the blueprint for the artwork is
Yes,
there.
yes, and then the fabricator does
I don't
what
think it's
the artist...
fabricated.
It is fabricated. If I go and do a painting, and I do all the painting like Peter Doyle does his work, or Tomasa Abt, or else name? Yeah, Abt, she does her own work, right? That's a different category of work, different category of craft, different category of art.
But if someone comes along and I'm not really familiar with these artists and I see, I'll just say that's a nice piece of work. I may not have, I would have
That's
to
a
care about
target,
the
that's a
artist.
target choice, yeah. That's a
But that's what I'm
target.
saying, it doesn't matter to if you want to go with the wrong people.
I mean, what you
It
said
doesn't
is that-
matter if someone, they ship it off to a factory in a whole other country and say, here's my blueprint, make it, because the person will come along and just look at it.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys maybe come along with your opinion of the artist ahead of time. And I think that in itself just shows your opinion and changes it. And maybe then that's where you might think it is or it isn't elitist. Because you maybe have the background of the artist. And I can just come along with the Turner Prize and look at it and say, I'm coming in with an open mind. I don't know who's done this. I mean, I don't remember their names actually even now. And I just saw it an hour ago. Because I just remember the artwork.
I don't think there should be the difference in ranking between, you know, if an artist has made it themselves or if they've got an idea and then they've gone and said, right, can you just make this physically, put it together? But I don't think there should be a difference in ranking. It really irritated me when...
Yeah.
But then because, you know, I want to do about art's changed. It's not about kind of, you know, an artist slogging away like, 10 hours a day in the studio, kind of doing amazing things. It's different. Like, it can be that, but I think people just maybe need to like broaden what they think of as being an artwork. It can be a photograph. It can be a performance. It can be standing in a toilet talking about art. You know, it doesn't have to be something physical in a way. And I think, that's not anything elitist. I don't think that's elitist. It's just understanding that something that was done,
No,
by the way people worked 500 million years ago is different to how they work
But
now.
was the bringing of that concept elitist in the beginning, and then but the supporting of it has made it accepted now. The Turner Award has made what was seen as elitist now accepted because it's been marketed, it's
I still
been...
think so, yes.
I think that perception is still there. I don't think that's something that's going to go away.
Well, what would make it, at the it's not even an old person or an average person, just a normal person going about their everyday business. Go and see an exhibition of things that aren't, I'm not saying that I don't like things like that or appreciate them, but what, my dad's sitting at home, he doesn't want to go upstairs and look at any of that sort of stuff because it wouldn't give him any pleasure.
There's something going on at the moment outside as you walk in. There's that bit of clay and that stick and the bricks on top. As you walk in on the walkway.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
No.
And there's this family walking past and I heard the man saying, "Oh, we're told that's art."
Right.
I think that is
I thought that was an interest, yeah, but no one has to tell you what is art.
No, but that, I think
No one's
that's
allowed to
how
say
it is, isn't it?
Half the time that's what's happening.
That's
Yeah,
what this is what art is, and that's why I think there is, wherever elitist means, there's a push for a certain type of art, for it to be pushed onto people, for them to
That's
understand.
creative though. I mean, music and movies and dance and contemporary dance versus ballet, you could say you could appreciate ballet and you could creative contemporary dance, and you could say that's not dance. Or if someone said, this is the most amazing dance troupe, you're going to go and say, well, that was the most amazing dance
So
troupe.
what if they're, if you were to dance, what if they're, like your ballet, they go to training?
All dancers go to training.
But yeah, but say your contemporary dancers, if they're not trained, could you tell they weren't trained dancers?
That's nothing to do with contemporary dance. You don't need to be.
I'm just saying, would they be a
I
different
just
dancer?
say about contemporary art, I didn't point
No, would they be a different?
contemporary artists though, I could look and I could say, I could do that myself.
But could you actually do it yourself though? This is,
Sometimes.
That's what I'm saying.
You come up with
Did you think
concepts
it's
and
an
like
idea?
the
No, you
meaning
couldn't
of
do
it.
that.
I don't think.
Well, okay, then let's issue a challenge to the camera. Let's issue a challenge to the Tate. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Why don't we each create a contemporary piece of work and put it upstairs? And let's see what the public think. If we're famous artists. Give us, say we're from America, somewhere where people don't know. No, I'm not being rude. Just say we're from somewhere else, right? And these are 6 new works. Let's just see how people react.
But if you went to the Turner and there were absolutely no names on any of the works of art, I'm just saying, but if you want, or if the whole Tate Museum had absolutely no artist names listed anywhere, how could you tell?
Personally, I think if I was to make a piece of conceptual art and exhibit it and have the blurb up and for people to read, I don't think people would buy it. I think people think it was because of my background and because of my status, maybe they wouldn't appreciate it. Maybe
Some gallery out of New York, some well-known gallery out of New York, like Culley gives its name and says you're one of the new discovered artists. What would people's reaction be to it? Would they be reacting to you as a new market object, or would they be reacting to you as a new found artist? As somebody who's considered art and you're a new discovery? Or would they just be saying, well, if Culley is saying he's an artist, or she's an artist?
it all
then
depends on
it
who
must be
says what. I think.
Well, that's the difference, isn't it? Is it the artist or is it the actual product? And I think once I've done something, it's gone then and it's out there for whoever wants to look at it. It's not me. I'm not the product, that's the product. But I think we get mixed up. Like you say, somebody could come along and pick anybody and say, right, they're absolutely fabulous artists. With set challenges and try and turn people into DJs and stuff like that. And it's the hype, and then people go, well, yeah, that because people are going, right, this is what we've done, this is how we do it, and wow, that is amazing, and there's nothing in it, and it's just like a con, it's like a joke, and that's what I think is some art.
Isn't that happening though?
That's what I mean, I think it's like an ongoing thing, and
I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that people should be aware that they're all artists. I think that's why we're in this. I think I really don't agree, I don't think, but like everybody's an artist, and it's not just what we present in a gallery that people
no, I'm
do
not saying that, what I'm saying is
day
it's
to
like these people who can see an eye for something, and then they'll go, right, they'll make it into a big thing, and then that's how people make money, get famous or whatever, and then they see it as the new thing, and then people are buying the work, but then, like you say, there's loads of other people who are just going about things every day.
There's a very good article about, what's his name, Cornelia Parker? Parker, and she's got an exhibition in Birmingham. And they made the point that she's an artist of integrity because she's avoided the market stroke speculation of the Freeze era group of artists. And she's retained her integrity. And it's an interesting thing for people to say that there's the British artist, she's kept away from that. She's still obviously making a good living, etc. She's about the kind of fame they've got. But there's an artist who's still doing her conceptual work, but doing it out of an integrity. You know, does that mean that there's a lack of integrity in the viewpoint of the critic about the other artists?
Well, it would indicate that, but you know.
I don't know, if you take someone like Tracy Emin, who, you know, you're talking about kind of, you know, is it the artist or the product? But I think with somebody, it can work quite in a negative way for that person. Because I think maybe with her, you can now, because, I don't know, she's such a figure and they've made this huge kind of thing about her, you can never look at her artwork and not think about her as a person. Or not look at the tent and not go, oh right, that's because she slept with all these men. Like actually, the tent isn't about that. It's about kind of like intimacy and like sharing a bed with someone from when she was a little kid. But people don't realise that because they, you know, this image of her
That's
is just kind
the
of
artist,
been
so
constructed.
You want to talk about prominent people or anything, I mean, your view has changed because you have a background on an artist. But like if you went, you didn't know who the artist was, and it wasn't the piece that was obviously her or whoever else, you know.
Tracy's actually done an awful good for conceptual art in that she's intelligent, she's very articulate, she presents an intelligent presentation when she talks about art. She is very bright, whereas the likes of Tate Liverpool doesn't really present it, to my opinion, intelligently. He makes flippant remarks about art.
In fact, can't he be playing his constructed image at the same game? Can't he be playing it at the same game?
Yeah.
Someone like the Chapman brothers, they're all, you know, I think, you know, contemporary artists now are extremely clever. They know how to market themselves. They know what the market wants and they use it to become successful.
What value does that actually have then?
I think it's about kind of, it's the difference between being an artist now and being an artist like 20, 30 years ago. I think it's changed.
What is that? That's the able to market yourself.
Yeah, I think that's an integral part of like, you know.
Yeah.
So if you produce really good work that people like but you can't market yourself, so you just fall by the wayside, or people don't see your work, or you just get another job.
Exactly, essentially that's what I'm trying to make. The problem is that if you're a great artist that can't market yourself, no one sees your work, you know, you're going to die a great artist.
But it's become more of a work ethic.
Sorry, but you associate with it.
Yeah, you know, you kind of everyone's aware of the free show and that kind of thing, and that really important thing that happened, and that was a really important thing for the basis of what's happening now. But it doesn't have a value in itself. You know, it is clever marketing. You know, but yeah, it doesn't. It's not better than someone else's piece of work. It's just better marketing, isn't it? You know, and that's a tremendous shame. I think that we. You know, walk upstairs and we're presented with this is the best, you know.
It's maybe not the best, but it's, I don't know, I think it's just people that, I'm not sure.
Well, what is it?
I think it's like certain segments of art that's appealing to certain audience. You know, it's like
This
not
is-
a representative of
Then
art.
certain
No,
This is a
audiences-
people's gallery. This is a people's gallery. It's not like a gallery in, you know, Cork Street in London or New York. Or this is a people's gallery. This is where people bring their children, or they come here to be educated. This represents the people's gallery. All the maybe take moderns.
So going back to
Galleries in
Judy's point,
general,
why-
that's what galleries are meant to do.
Yeah,
They're meant to be
especially,
educational.
yeah.
And okay, it might be different from a commercial gallery in New York where, you know, they might be showing really kind of out there work that not everyone can engage with, but
Did you make the point before that those people aren't coming though? Why is that happening? Why isn't it actually the biggest gallery? You know, if that's what it's here to provide, why aren't people coming? Why isn't the lady coming?
What they want.
you can't make everyone come to a gallery. It's not.
No, I'm not talking about the national conscription of art. Do you know what I mean? But people won't just walking because like the chap said, you know, that this is what we're told is art.
The Japanese wallpaper calls it flowers. They build a gallery just for one painting. They accuse of people who see that one painting. Why?
Because it's Van Gogh.
Exactly.
And I've heard someone tell us times that, oh, I went there and I was very, very impressed and blown away. I went there, I waited 3 hours and I saw the exact same thing on the book. And it's just, you know, it's your perception.
Sorry, I'm late.
I didn't actually like the book myself. I was very disappointed. Only because of the size.
Everyone says that, don't
Yeah,
they?
I agree with the size, you know. Is that me being elitist?
Hello.
I'm going to go over Lisa.
Lisa. Hello.
I'm Derek.
Hello.
I'm Judy.
Hello.
Judy.
Hello. Nice to meet you all. Yeah.
Great.
The M6 was a nightmare. Sorry. There's an accident, but luckily it wasn't too bad. But anyway, I'm here now.
There's no fatalities.
No, luckily, yeah, but it was horrible driving the second gear all the way here. So there you go.
I was sad those children getting killed last night.
Yeah, it was on the radio, and they were talking about there's another show, they were talking about Russell Watson, the actor, the
Yeah,
the brain machine. So that's quite, it sort of puts things into perspective, really. And I've brought a box of cards to give out to everybody.
Okay.
But I'll do that later. But
Where will we
where are you up to?
I think we were talking about the Bangkok and the people queuing, people actually making the effort to come to a people's gallery.
I think it was something to do with like the universality about.
Oh, well, there's a discussion on the radio when I was coming down about that on Classic FM.
Okay, what were they saying?
Well, they had Julie Lloyd-Webber on. It was just, I just thought it was so perfect, because as I drove into Liverpool, it was like fireworks going off in the distance, and Julie Lloyd-Webber was being asked about the exclusivity of classical music, you see, and he was denying this, which I thought was really amazing, because for example, on the Classic FM, I've never heard a piece of work written by a female composer, for example, never. So it was just amazing to hear him talking about.
There's always a chance of something you're not listening.
Yeah, maybe. But I remember one day I was listening to Classic FM and we're going to play a piece of music by, and they named this lady, and I was going, I can't believe it. Oh my God, the first time I've heard a piece of work composed by a woman on Classic FM in 5-6 years of listening to the programme. And then it just went silent because we appeared to have technical glitches. So the one piece of music I thought I might have heard, it didn't play. So, but yeah, Julian Lloyd-Webber doesn't think it's exclusively, so anyway.
Well, that was an interlude.
Yeah, that was right.
Interlude.
Yeah. I forgot what the question was. What was the question?
You were discussing
Well, art and elitism and art being available.
Art can be any art and anything, but art is generally wrong.
Perception of art by all.
Perception of art is elitist.
And what
Does
was
the
it?
enterprise
talk about whether we thought the turn of pride. He read out, Jay read out a statement saying, is art purposefully elitist? How much kind of like the turn of prize that raise awareness of contemporary art? How does it do it? And I really disagree with the whole term elitist. And kind of I don't see how you can categorise kind of things that are elitist, kind of common people. I think that's really horrific.
Right.
And I don't really disagree with those types of categories, but then we're kind of, just discussing it in general, really.
So did anyone else draw any conclusions?
That kind of sums it up. I don't know. Well, we had some conversations going one time too.
I think the turn of prize is aimed at sort of, and I wouldn't say elite group, a bit of it people, but it does attract a certain, say, middle class, people,
Do you think it attracts people that come to the Turner Prize? Do you think that the majority of people that come have studied art, they know about art, they've seen the Turner Prize
I think
before?
now that it's in Liverpool, I mean, I never came to it when it was in London, but maybe the fact that it's in Liverpool, more people know.
Or different types of people will? Or
Were you at the
I
private
think it's
fair?
anywhere.
Were you at the private fair?
I was, yeah.
I mean, what was that? That was a crowd of art people. I felt that.
Yeah, it's a private view though. I mean, it's kind of,
It's
you know, and it's for the Turner Prize.
Artists overall are kind of elitist. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but going through school and going to certain places in any city, you're always like, that's an art, that's an artist, they're artsy, and the artist is kind of,
What do you mean? Like?
Yeah, it's what they're gallery, it's kind of art.
no, but I'm saying like as a person, not deep down, but like, okay, university, or, I don't know, high school here, but like maybe the musicians stick together, the arts people stick together, the dancers stick together, there's always little cliques, and in a sense you can sometimes tell that that's an artist, because with any form of creativity, you could say that anyone's an elitist, right?
But then isn't that just a comment on human nature? Kind of the way people find each other. You find people with common ground. It's the same way you sort of find relationships. Maybe one of the problems with kind of the Turner Prize is the fact that people believe, I'm not one of those sorts of people. I've got a regular job. I'm not an artist. I don't know how to.
So don't forget, if you go to these galleries and I have some knowledge of art, but admittedly not terribly much, especially not as a more contemporary. And if I go and I hear other people talking, they're very informative and they have a certain air of them, which you gotta admit some people do, I might be put off with some of it. And someone else might be even more
I
put
think
off.
that's the whole point. I don't think that matters. Why can't a piece of art, can't you just look at it in isolation and appreciate it and not have to have any description?
But people might come to the Tate, someone might say, well, if someone says a comment, I don't think that's art, someone else can sit there and just pair into them. And that would then say, I'm not coming back to the Tate gallery because I don't want to be put in this.
I don't think that would happen.
That's very true.
I don't think that would happen.
I've seen similar stuff happen.
Interesting.
Because you hear a comment, and there's some people that just can't keep their house to themselves. And especially if they have more knowledge of that they're an artist themselves, they might go over and say, well, you don't know that the art is this and this and this and this.
But I don't think, well, I don't know, I just don't think that would, maybe you said you've seen it, but I don't think just because someone knows about art, I don't think just in a gallery they go up to someone and go, oh, well, you should like this because it's Damien Hirst, like things
I
like
don't think they'll say
that.
because of that, but they might say, well, you're not appreciating that these 5 lines represents this, or you're not, the 10. Someone can say, well, you're not appreciating the 10 means this and this and this.
But, I've studied art, but I don't class myself as, I love contemporary art and I get really excited about coming to see the Turner Prize and going to see contemporary art shows and stuff, but I don't expect anyone else to have the same knowledge or passion or,
would you call
love the same stuff as I
would you
do.
call it popular art?
But what's popular art though?
Well, I think if people went upstairs and looked at Bridget Riley, they'd have a more or less intimidating or responsive to because of colours, and it's less, I won't use the word intellectually challenging because that's not what it's about.
Sorry. I find that shocking, sorry.
Yeah, but Bridget Riley does certain things with colours, and people generally might find that more popular, as opposed to having to look at 2 bits of woods going across the opening of a doorway and calling that art. They might find, whereas Bridget Riley's got an image they can relate to, they can relate to colours.
Maybe they relate to a threshold.
Maybe they can, a piece of wood going across.
But that was supposed to be artists and thresholds, so maybe they say,
popular, would you call that elitist? Or would you call that popular?
I don't like the word elitist at all, though.
No, but if you don't like the word elitist, what you replace it with?
Why should I
That's why I don't understand what you're saying to me. I don't really understand what do you think is elitist? Well, how do you describe what's elitist? If like a bit of a branch going over the door and I go on like, wow, that's incredible, I love that branch. I might really love that branch. Someone else might think it's a load of crap, that's fine. Surely that doesn't make me elitist, I might be really moved. I might think that's, for me, that's a great art.
But the question really doesn't enhance the artists, I don't think, it does enhance the institutions. That's the whole issue, elitism is with the hierarchical structure of the ancient institutions. But I don't think an artist sets out to make an elitist piece of work. I think it's very easy to say that Jordana is more popular because she has all the illusionistic kind of, thing, the painting going on. It's a very easy doorway into appreciating a British
Well, I was going to make the
piece.
point that British Riley has been established for a long time, since the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
and the images have come through. Now, is there a time passage for conceptual art to come through? Where it becomes popular art as opposed to elitism?
Well, I think that is happening, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. If you
Because
look at the Turner Award in the 90s, where artwork is changing because of the awards.
Can you say what we consider pop art now as conceptual art?
At the time.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
it's always
So I don't think it's a notion of what is popular. No, I think it's the idea of accessibility. And that obviously, you know, there's a question of does an artist actually have any responsibility for his work to be accessible? Which, you know, what do you
Suppose
think
they
about that?
do, but then artists can say, well, do you know what, why should I think about this? If I want to make an artwork that I really love, and this is the way I work, and this is my idea, should they actually, when they're doing that, when they're making that artwork, should they actually think, oh, is the audience going to understand it, or, you know, is someone going to engage with this? If they, you know, it's finding that, you know, they shouldn't have to feel that they need to please certain people when
that's
they're...
aesthetics, that's the artist being true to themselves. What about fashion?
Yeah.
What about fashion? Where somebody has established through conceptual image, this is
Fashion
being
is
seen as high art, and then the dealers say, well, we need more of this, and people do it. What about fashion? Same with painting.
That's just the growth of art, isn't it?
It's actually any art.
It's art, or you know, that's how movements come about. I don't think you can't pull those two things apart, you know.
I don't think artists try and go, oh right, so, you know, this is in fashion at the moment, I'm going to do that. They might do, but I don't genuinely think that any artist really does that. And if they do,
you can't
they do
ignore
it
it
in a
anyway,
way.
so you can't ignore it. It's just the climate in which you live in. You can't, you know.
They might be affected if they see something that's kind of, if they see a movement like, you know, the Freeze, like the young British artists, they might be kind of affected by what's happening around them, but I don't think that they would necessarily...
If there wasn't such a strong elitist thing with the galleries and the critics to, I don't know, pioneer, but to champion this kind of art, would it see itself through?
Or would it die?
Or would it die?
But that, galleries and dealers, that's always happened throughout the whole, and you know, you can't just get rid of that and say, right, art can survive on its own without the help of galleries, without the help of institutions, without, you know, people, collectors. That's not going to happen. They need to work together. So I suppose the dealer just say, oh wow, I really love your stuff, and it, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, you know, I love your set of cardboard boxes or something like that, that's amazing, and they buy it, then that's up to them, isn't it? It's that balance.
What if, okay, you see the paintings here, and then you go to like a cafe or something, you see the paintings on the wall. I mean, where do you draw the line between the two? You could say they're both contemporary or whatever, and if you don't know who the artist is, then you still appreciate that so much. Because I think that
Probably not, because, you know, you might have paid to get into a gallery, you know, so I suppose institutions do have that, you know, it's up to them to kind of pioneer what they think is kind of what people are going to enjoy, what's the latest thing, but then you can't change that because that's the purpose of galleries, to kind of put on shows that are engaging and stimulating their audiences and are showing new exciting work, or, you know, they have a collection as
Actually,
well.
the purpose of seeing this new exciting art, you know? Whereas if you go into like a cafe that just happens to have art on the wall, then you just happen to see it. Versus you go into the museum, you go to the gallery, you're saying, I'm coming here purposely to see this art. The purpose is to see the artist. So right there.
It doesn't devalue the stuff you see in the cafe.
No,
it's
it's
all
just
what
like-
people value. It's just,
You know, if you
it's
come
just
here and you purposely say, I'm getting up, I'm going to see art, that might change that. Oh, I think right there, that changes your opinion of it. Because you're going with hopefully a mind of acceptance or openness or, you know.
But there is a difference between seeing something exist and seeing something in a cafe, because if you look at there's opportunities for artists and things, you've got to send your CV off. It's what exhibitions have you had? Who do you know?
You can say
It's
it's
like
cafe ratio in the cafe down the road.
and it's like you've got, it's also like the people who spoke to, it's almost like processing. You might go into a cafe and then, you know, if you get picked up by a gallery or something, then that's the next step, and then you sort of on your way. But if you don't, you don't. So if somebody is better or
It's
the relationship with the audience is still the same. I mean, as long as that kind of thread is there, I mean, what's the harm that it's in a different space?
So it's like, what if a painting from a cafe, okay, 6 months later you see it in the museum or a gallery? Is that, are you going to like it more because now it's in the gallery?
Well, I wouldn't. It would, yeah, I mean, what?
Put something in the Tate,
Sure.
that's hierarchy visibility.
It's like you said,
But that
Michael
artist-
Ball, that's having a brain tumor. He worked in the factory. Now he sings on a world stage.
Yeah,
Was he the same singer in the factory as he is on the world stage? Of course he was.
yeah.
It's the same person, the same creativity.
But just because something's hanging in the Tate doesn't mean it's new and exciting. Even though the Tate might tell you it's new and exciting, you know. But then you know, you get good and bad and everything, don't you, really, but it's so controlled, you know.
So that's the beauty of the history of art, though, isn't it? That you can see what you think is good and bad. You can go from pre-modern, post-modern.
The issue for artists is
Yeah,
to see.
it's the freedom, and as long as you're getting, as in the Tate, you've got the different floors, the different exhibitions. It's not like the Tate Modern where you just walk in and it's conceptual.
It's not conceptual though, I don't know what you mean by that. I think the Tate Modern shows work from kind of like 1850 to the present day. So you've got, you know, impressionist paintings.
What do you call conceptual?
Conceptual
what's
art.
on upstairs in the fourth floor?
That's, I don't know, I don't want to get into categories again. For me, that's contemporary art. That's kind of what's the artist, they're kind of, you know, presumably they've been nominated for the Turner. Yeah, I mean that's something that happened in the 60s. I think that's like a totally separate
What we're doing now, you know, it's like
conceptual for me is like an idea that's kind of
label this out, put it in.
whereas contemporary is for me stuff,
No, you can listen again.
stuff that's happening right now. So artists that are
Amazing.
amazing.
You need to speak up. Fight your
Yeah, I think the boundaries of art go down to just asking so people like
Because there's one level where you're led by the art, which
they
is
kind of straight and
the other level where you're looking at you say
Yeah.
you feel challenged by it.
be it conceptual.
Those ways are great and other ways it's
No, I just think it's
frustrating. It's like
anything that's new
it's a problem. No,
Yeah,
I think it's makes sense to change to reverse that maybe, but I don't know what.
So do you think that the Turner Prize has a responsibility to promote work that is universal to people regardless of
To be honest, no, I think it's found in what it does. I think it does what it does well, and so no, I don't think it has to appeal to like the Joe Blocks off the street, no. But I think it is elitist. I think it does aim at a certain audience.
But would you feel more comfortable viewing a piece of art that is universal or
Well, that would have that if I
Just have a
if
great
I thought
appeal
that
to
was
you.
just it's just good in itself, and it's hard because we're talking in a broad sense. We're not talking about a single piece of art. But yeah, if I felt like it was appealing to everybody, I think that was a good piece of art. Yeah.
But are you going to get one piece of art that everyone loves universally? I don't think you're ever going to get that. And I think you get pieces like we were talking about before, like the Mona Lisa. And I think, to be honest, I think it's like an amazing, or so-say amazing piece of artwork. But I think the only reason that it's universally kind of thought of as this masterpiece is because it's built up this image of it being so amazing, and then the majority of people that go along and see it go, oh, that's actually quite small. And it's like, well, and it's I think it's just this acceptance. People think, oh wow, this is thought to be amazing, therefore it is amazing. They don't make that decision on their own.
Artists.
What are you?
I'm very interested.
Okay. And you're a painter.
I just like being labelled to
I've just done the
Oh, very good. And you're
visual artist.
right, and you're
Artist, curator, very good.
very good. An artist.
And what's your medium?
Photography, mostly photography. So mine is sort of misconstrued as a photojournalist, but I'm not. I'm an artist. Hello.
I'm just going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it for you. John, be on camera. I'll tell you what, you can something you said earlier just a minute ago about Joe Blocks, and something you said earlier about like straight on the floor.
What's the worst thing?
I find that beautiful.
I might do, I might not.
No, I'm just saying, you say you might find it beautiful. Now, if Joe Blocks walked in and saw a bit of wood on the floor, Joe Blocks might say, I like that. But then you get the art speak, you get the art writers, which are an art form in themselves, so you can plug together. And Does that mean that, is that where elitism comes in, where it denies Joe Blogs?
I'm not even
I
on
think
It does deny Joe Blogs accessibility. Because now it's compromising
I'm
Joe
going to
Blogs.
stand over here.
I think it excludes people. The article excitement is seen as more important.
Well,
I'm changing the dynamic here.
No, but what I mean, I used to read Art Monthly, right? And I just got tired of reading Art Week.
I'm a bit insane, actually, so.
But you find yourself talking about yourself, don't you?
No, I just found it a lot of shite. Sorry, I mean,
How did you find shite?
Art Monthly. I mean, it's a good magazine, but I just found the articles about the art. If I see something I like, I like.
Do you know the only reason why I look at those is to see if anyone I studied with is in the arts.
Hello?
We're doing a talk.
Yeah.
You want to join us?
Yeah.
Come and join us.
Come on then. Don't stand for the camera though.
The last point we've made is about accessibility to contemporary art, conceptual art. For example, when Joe Blogs goes along and sees a piece of contemporary art, but then you see the art speak, the explanation. Does that compromise Joe Blogs? Does they can't perhaps understand it?
What do you mean by compromise then?
What do you mean by art speak?
It becomes elitist.
Well, I think I take real offence at that.
Same
Well, the whole thing is
We're used to it. We're probably elitist, but wanting to admit it.
So the whole reason why I go into art first place is to that's the whole otherwise it would be right.
So usually, you know, when everyone talks about alcoholics, you know what they're kind of talking about.
What I kind of see, but then, you know,
We're always setting ourselves up.
you know when you were saying about people who write an article, like those people that write those articles, you know, they've studied art, they know a lot about art, and they've, you know, they're kind of art critics, they're writers who are really interested in studying the history of art. And if they want to write these essays and interpret the artwork, that's what they do. That's
So
their work.
therefore you are saying it's elitist.
I'm not saying, no, I'm not. Why is it elitist? Just because someone goes to university, like me and Alan, who studied art history, and then we decide that, you know, I might decide now, I finished my MA last year, I might go, oh, you know, I'd love a job at Art Monthly. I might go and go, right, I want to be an art critic, I want to write essays and stuff. Why does that make me elitist? That might
Sure.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
think
saying there's nothing wrong with it.
that might just make someone, you know, that's their job, that's what they want to do.
Okay, so they're an expert, yeah.
They can say, oh, I'm really interested in, you know, Tracy Ellis' work, I'm a scholar.
Okay, so we can remove the word elitist and replace it with expert. Do the expert to make accessibility for the ordinary person
What
more
makes someone
difficult?
an expert?
Where are you from?
Dublin.
How are you? I'm just from John Pants, you know.
I love you.
Do you know what I think? Sorry to you know, check. I keep thinking, what would you all do if I went over there and whipped out a willy and started cleaning it in the toilet? Sorry, actually that's what I haven't got a willy.
I'd be very impressed. That's what I call action art.
Sorry, just to put that dynamic again.
I think I'd go out screaming.
Would you?
This is a great piece of.
I'd find it.
Also, a bit of an energy thing going on here.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
No, I've got bad legs.
Anyway, elitism lies in the hands of the institution, it doesn't lie in the hands of the artists. I think that's
Well, I don't think it lies in the hands of people that interpret, people that write about art either.
I don't think Joe Blogs reads Art Monthly. I don't think Joe Blogs would understand the art speak or the art balls upstairs on the wall.
Well, he might, you know, Joe Blogs might think, do you know what, art's a load of crap, I'm going to go down and get pissed at the pub and watch football. That's fair enough, that's his choice.
So would
But
the
But
artists.
that doesn't make people that are into art elitist, that just says, well, you know what, I've got a different interest.
So how do you define elitist? And how do you define elitist as opposed to expert? How do you
Well,
differentiate
Between elitism and expert,
and an expert?
I'm an expert. I don't think an expert is elitist at all. I think they decided, oh, I'm going to study art, this is what I'm really passionate about. I want to write about it and I want to, you know, I'm knowledgeable about certain subjects. And that's what they want to go and do. And if they want to go and talk about it in front of people, and if people take it the wrong way, or if Joe Boss goes, oh, do you know what, you're elitist because you know about art, then that's his problem. That's not the problem of the person that wants to be an expert in a
But
subject.
regardless of their good nature, I think that's the perception, isn't it? And I think that's quite widely held, you know, whether, despite, you know, that nice person, you know, having the best intentions and wanting to spread the word and kind of give their expert opinion on art, I think the perception is that person is part of an elitist group.
But that's not necessarily their
But you can say that about any subject.
We're talking about accessibility for the ordinary person's art.
I do think
And what-
there is.
It's not the same as football, you know, like a woman might feel it's really difficult to go into the cop, you know, and go and view a football game sometimes, you know, because that's kind of like a difficult environment to go into. And it's not just an arts perspective, like you say, that's just one crowd, you know.
Art
I'll
appreciation.
tell you about in my opinion of elitism though. It's like the Liverpool show that they had here. It was mostly artists not from Liverpool, and the highest percentage of pictures in the show were by southern white male artists doing derogatory pictures of Liverpool. And that to me is elitism. And I wrote a letter of complaint to the Tate.
So that could be quite sexist.
For which they have not replied to yet. I'm still waiting for my reply. So yeah, I mean, it's really bad. And then they had the Chinese art show, which was fantastic. But they only had one. And do you know, what's the population of China? It's actually 1 billion people in China. Out of a 1 billion population of China, they could only find one female.
Well, that wasn't bad.
So that you're talking about elitism, you're talking all about the dialogue at the arts.
Sexism.
Yeah, well, the feminism,
the
the
commentators
taste,
will
the
go to these
rest of
shows,
it.
and I go and I'm not familiar. I don't care who I come to these places and I don't care who the artist is. If I know them, then great, I might come for them. But I came here not knowing, not caring who these artists are, and I can appreciate it. So
But
that's,
I can appreciate that as well. But I think when you're a practitioner, you notice these things, I think. So
That's what I'm saying.
like when I was a composer and I was listening to classic FM every day, the usual blah, blah, blah every day, you know, and there's no way they'll air my music. I think that becomes an issue.
but I think as an artist, maybe that's why you perceive that there's this elitism, because maybe you're more aware of it, or you think you're more aware of it, whereas the common people, you just don't care.
Yeah, maybe people don't. Maybe people don't.
It's elitism that brings the art to us.
But
the
it's
whole
very
art
right wing
scene.
though, isn't it? If you've just got a show of like white middle class London-based men, that's that's an elite. That's elite. I don't think
It's up to them.
It's more,
yes,
it's,
it is. And DJs, radio DJs are elitist too. Music hall producers, concert organizers, everyone with the creative arts is elitist, but that's a negative label that just, they own this place, they can put what they want there.
they can do that. I think. Like when you talk about elitism with regards to the actual artwork, I mean, as artists, we're involved in our own inner dialogue with making this work. But in terms of visibility, that's when we start hitting upon these elitist structures, you know, the selection.
I think what was good when the last George Schwartz exhibition, they had like what people had said, school children, and then there's some like pop stars and things that what they wrote, and some of them was like, I like the painting, but I think that the lines don't get rubbish, things like that. And I thought that was really where I seen the article I seen on the news was Tate cleaner going around to the exhibitions, and she said about the fans on the floor. She said, I just think that it's a health hazard. That's everything like that. I thought that was like.
Well, what was the one main thing that she said about the whole thing?
She said it was good.
No, the one, I didn't hear that.
I thought she said
the thing I heard, I'm not saying she didn't say that. The thing I heard, the thing I heard was that it's good for Liverpool.
Yeah.
So it's a little shite, no problem. If it's good for Liverpool, yeah.
I was saying about Manchester United, but
It's good for Liverpool.
but that's the good thing about, the Turner Prize, it's always been in London. But this year, it's come to Liverpool. Surely that's a kind of, a statement in itself.
No.
Well, I have something to
My
say
point
about
is,
this.
she was saying, regardless of what is or isn't art, that at least the event is good for Liverpool. It should be that the art is good for Liverpool.
Well, this is just great, you know, because they were holding the Turner Prize this year in Liverpool. Ian Jackson, I hope you're still there, Ian, listening. Ian Jackson from Washroom Liverpool decided to have the Liverpool Turner Prize.
Alternative, yeah.
Because they were trying to, not in a negative way, it's like a positive thing, you know, to try and kind of encourage them to consider having a Northerner on the shortlist, or somebody from Liverpool on the shortlist. And it's just really, really interesting. So they've got this art, of which I'm shortlisted. And it's mostly, interestingly enough, it's mostly women on the shortlist for this Liverpool prize, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that prizes like that springing up because of what's perceived about the Turner Prize, you know. And I was trying to think, had anyone from Liverpool ever been on the Turner Prize shortlist? I think maybe Tony Cragg is from Liverpool. But yeah, it's interesting.
Who's this?
We'll keep going. Oh, I know him from
You just stand for a few.
so yeah, I think when you talk about elitism, I think it's unfair to talk about it in terms of the actual artist's work as such, really, because it's a much bigger issue going on here, for me anyway, as a practitioner. It's a much bigger issue with regards to elitism, and that's to do with the structures in place. For example, let's take the Arts Council, the artist's favourite subject.
I like art.
You were okay. It's funny, you know, because I read my horoscope today.
And it said you will be starting a toilet.
In fact, no, wait, I have to read it out. I'm sorry. I'm completely, yeah. I read my horoscope today from...
I think we should replace the bear with you.
Replace the bear? Oh yeah, well my friend claims he's paid 20 quid to dress up as the bear, actually. Where is my horoscope?
Carry your horoscope.
No, I printed it out, so I was going to read it out, you see. Because anyway, it said something like, where is it?
What sign are you?
It said, I'm Cancerian.
I'm Cancerian.
Are you? Right, well listen, well I've got to find it now. It's Russell Grant.
I think Russell Grant's the best.
It says something about... Yeah, I have got to read the text.
Yeah, no, you've got to get the right thing.
I was thinking about romance in the metro. You will have an romantic encounter.
Oh, we're finished. Well, anyway, it said something about don't rage against the machine today. It's really funny. Yeah, it said don't rage against the machine, don't speak out too loudly.
Just missed out. Just missed it.
Do I get you one of those late? Oh, it was an ice cream. You can eat it.
Well, that probably is.
You know, something you'll probably find it, doesn't it?
I will find it as soon as I go home. It's so
Totally white.
irritating.
Yes.
Russell Grant, if you get a chance, I'll today.
Is it today's metro? Because I'm going to try and find it.
Are you?
Yeah. I think it's because I haven't done my horoscope today.
What are you?
Leo.
Oh, you're a Leo, so you're an exhibitionist.
Apparently so, yeah.
What are you, Derek?
September, here we go.
You haven't washed out.
Oh, it's so annoying. I can't find it. Right, yeah, it's in there. It is, it's in here somewhere because I put
Did it not slip out?